Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sorting Myself Out. Mercury and I found a clip that we are going to respond to of Jordan Peterson talking about moving towards your potential. On his YouTube channel, it is entitled Take Aim Even Badly. And we're going to just watch the first few minutes of it. And there's a link in the description if you want to go watch the whole thing. And we're going to give you our response.
When I talk to people about doing the future authoring program, they often put it off. And it's not surprising because it's hard. But it's more than that. They think, well, I don't know how to write. I'm going to do a bad job. I don't really like assignments. I'm going to have to do it perfectly. I need to wait till I have enough time. And like one of those is enough to stop you cold, and all five of them, you're just done. And so I tell people, do it haphazardly, a tiny bit at a time, and badly, because you can do that. I tell my students when they're doing their theses, master's thesis, write a really bad first draft. And then we have a little conversation about that because they don't think I mean that. Because it sounds like a cliche in some sense. It's not a cliche. It's not a cliche at all. It means you're a terrible writer, but if someone put a gun to your head and said, you have to have your 100-page thesis done by next Monday, or I'll shoot you, but I don't care how terrible it is, you would sit down and write it. And the thing is, then you have it, right? Then you have something, and then you can fix it. You can iterate and fix it. That bad first draft, that's the most valuable thing. And so that's what you need. You need a bad first draft of yourself. And there's an idea that Jung developed about the trickster and the jester, the comedian, right? That the trickster is the precursor to the savior. That's one of the things I learned from Jung that was just, it's so unlikely. You'd never think that. It's so amazing that that might be the case. But the satirical and the ironic and the troublemaker, the comedian, the fool is the precursor to the savior. Why? Because you're a fool when you start something new. And so if you're not willing to be a fool, then you'll never start anything new. And if you never start anything new, then you won't develop. And so the willingness to be a fool is the precursor to transformation. And that's the same as humility. And so if you're going to write your destiny, you can do a bad first job. You're going to get smarter as you move forward. That's the thing, is that, so something beckons to you. That's what happens here. Maybe the star that Geppetto wished on was the wrong damn star, but at least it was a star, right? At least it was in the sky. At least it moved him forward. And so you say in your life, well, something grips you and fills you with interest. And you think, well, should I do that? And the answer is, if not that, then something. What if it's a mistake? It's a mistake. Rest assured. What do you know? You're going to stumble around, right? And what's going to happen is this. You're going to not stay in stasis. You're not going to wander around in circles. And I see people like that. They said, well, I never knew what to do, and now I'm 40. It's like, that's not so good. That's not so good.
All right. So this is some of my favorite stuff that Peterson does. And I just find it to be so beneficial because the whole willingness to be a fool concept, I've really needed that, especially doing all these new ventures on YouTube and trying to start a business and going to graduate school and working with clients and all the collaboration that you and I are doing, Mercury. It's such an important lesson. And I've been talking to a lot of people about this. I'm talking to friends who want to start their own podcasts or venture into areas that they're passionate about. And a lot of people are so afraid to make a mistake or it's not going to be perfect that they go into that paralysis by analysis. They just never get started. And for those of you who've been following what we've been doing on the channel, there's been times where I've been a fool. I even had a video I had to admit, like, oh, I really made a huge mistake here. It hurts to be a fool. It hurts to make mistakes. I messed up the camera stuff with Ken Wilber Well, no, excuse me, with Tim Freak during the week that we were doing a lot of filming, and I learned so much from being a fool. I learned what I didn't know. I learned the areas where I was insufficiently prepared, and then I got better at it and was more prepared the next time. So I just find this to be some of my favorite stuff that Peterson talks about, because if we do take aim even badly, like his video is titled, then at least we're moving in the right direction. And I did this Jungian analysis of Lord of the Rings last quarter for school, or 2 quarters ago. And one of the things I realized is that Frodo is exactly what Peterson teaches. He stumbles forward even badly. He stumbles forward clumsily towards Mount Doom and eventually succeeds in his mission to destroy the ring, but he never does it perfectly. And in fact, he really doesn't know what the hell he's doing most of the time. And he needs all these guides and allies to help him along the way. And then eventually he gets in touch with his own inner courage, his anima in a Jungian sense, the inner Galadriel, the inner light. And he is able to stumble forward to success. And it was by no doing of his own at the end that the ring was destroyed. It was almost a stroke of good fortune that Gollum's greed is the very thing that ended up destroying the evil of the ring in the first place. And so it's just interesting that when we take aim and we commit to a path, somehow we have the opportunity to get support from unseen forces around us. Even things that may seem like bad end up being forces for good in the end, like Gollum, for example.
Absolutely. And since that clip started with Peterson talking about the self-authoring program, for people who haven't found the path yet, who aren't already struggling in the direction of a star, how useful did you find self-authoring? And for anyone who doesn't know what it is, how would that be helpful?
Yeah, I did the future authoring, and I found it to be incredibly useful because it allowed me to play with the creative potentials that I felt inside of myself. So what could I imagine my life could be like? And I got to map some of that stuff out in my relationships, in my career, in my education, in my athleticism, all these areas. Like, what could it really be? And you go to this place in your mind, you imagine what's possible. And in that process, something starts to shift. The more writing I did, the more that these things started to formulate as almost real places within my psyche. And I was eventually able to start to see some of those things manifest. I did it, I think, like 9 months ago, 8 months ago. And now I'm in this totally different place in my life. And a lot of the things that I could look back on, I could pull my self authoring sheet up right now, my future authoring sheet, and I could see that a lot of these things have come to fruition even in 8 months, which is insane to think about. Actually, sometime maybe we should do a video on that, looking back on the things that I had written about.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That would be very interesting.
Yeah. What do you think about this topic, though? About how does it apply for you?
Okay, so especially if we'll zoom in on self-authoring, I'm a perfect example of somebody who bought the program and still hasn't opened it. I think it's almost a year ago. Me and my wife both got it. She started it and has worked through part of it, but never completed it. I haven't taken the self-authoring yet, although I've had you and Andrew and some other people describe it to me. Because of the way I was already on a path with a star, I haven't felt any pressure to do it. And for me, I still intend to eventually do it. I had intended from the moment I bought it to do it at some point. Although I've thought through my life more than the average person, I'm curious to see if doing it gives me any insight. But actually taking over the channel has had a funny reverse effect on me, because the entire basis of the channel essentially is the self-authoring program. That's what caused the channel, and that's the idea of sorting myself out. Instead of taking over the channel and thinking like, oh shit, I should really do the program now, I have been thoroughly enjoying the ridiculousness of hosting a channel, encouraging other people to do self-authoring while having no idea of the actual experiences. Alan Moore says he likes to criticize things out of ignorance. So he doesn't watch movies based on his own books. He'd rather criticize it out of ignorance. Right. At the moment, I'm enjoying promoting the self-authoring program out of ignorance. It's just ridiculous and enjoyable, but I will go through it at some point.
Yeah, well, it's not like it's this dogma, like you have to do the self-authoring in order to be sorting yourself out. It's just one avenue in which we can explore the progress of our lives, the hero's journey that we're all on as individuals. So I'm gonna read a couple comments here. Vacure says, what if you know your path, but you're struggling with getting on it, even when you're eliminating stupid things you did before you're not doing now? Hold on, I have to read that again. What if you know your path, but you're struggling with getting on it, even when you're eliminating the stupid things you did before you're okay, so I understand that question. And then I'm just going to read a few more, and then we can kind of respond collectively. We Are Victorious says, I guess we just do it with struggle on our shoulders. Vicure said, isn't that system putting ourselves down? Empress of Eden says, I have started past authoring and future authoring. It is definitely helpful to organize thoughts and work towards goals. It has helped me refine my thoughts. It is interesting to go back to it. After a few months, I see how my life has changed. That's awesome. Great news. I think with you, Vicure, if you know your path, that's huge. A lot of people don't even know what their path is. So the fact that you even know what it is fantastic. I'll take a stab at a Petersonian answer here for you. If it's too big, we likely won't do it. So Peterson recommends we break things down into micro steps. So a lot of times if we're not starting, it can be because we've made such a big goal that it's impossible to accomplish. It's impossible to get started on. So if you break it down into micro goals, it might help. So if you say to yourself, I want to be a writer, and your goal is to write a book, and you stop there, then what you have in front of you is a whole book. And it feels impossible and unmanageable to even get started, because writing a whole book is, you know, the summation of hundreds, thousands of hours of work. So you think you get paralyzed because it's just, you can't do that all within the spectrum of one day or 1 hour. And so because of the overwhelm of it, sometimes we tend to divert our attention to other habits or other things and procrastinate. But if you broke it down potentially, and I don't know you very well, so I have no idea if this really applies to your specific life or not. If you broke it down into something manageable that you would do, that you want to do, and again, I'm putting on my Petersonian hat, trying to deliver his message as well as I can here, then you would stumble forward clumsily towards that higher self. So what if you just said, I'm going to write one sentence? In fact, like, what if you even broke it down? I'm going to write 3 words. Like, break it down to the smallest manageable piece of work that you can, and then start pushing your threshold of competence and tolerance for doing that work further and further. And the more you do that, the more that your tolerance will build. So eventually, maybe you can do a whole day of writing and you don't even feel fazed by it. But if we're just getting started, we need to start with something manageable, like going to the gym. You can say to yourself, I'm going to go to the gym for 2 hours every day. But if you haven't been going to the gym at all, jumping straight into 2 hours a day is pretty intimidating. On the other hand, if you say, I'm going to go to the gym for 20 minutes and just see if I can just do that, then you're at least making a step towards that. You're not putting too much pressure on yourself, and you're aiming low enough, like Peterson says, to actually succeed. So you want your life aim to be really high, but you want your micro aims towards that stumbling forward clumsily, remember, small enough that you could actually carry them out. That's the best I could do with answering it from a Peterson lens.
Okay. So I loved your whole response to that. And in no way am I now going to disagree. This is like the conversation we just had with Nolan. I want to now respond from a different level where in no way am I disagreeing with anything you said. I just want to take a different perspective. So can you read that one more time so I can respond to it fresh?
Sure. What if you know your path, but struggling with getting on it, even when you're eliminating stupid things you used to do?
Okay. So this person said, what if you know your path, but are struggling to get on it? Then you do not know your path. The path that you are saying you know is not what you know. You know where you are and what you are right now, like in a deeper sense of knowing. And the path that you know is the path that you're on now. The path you're claiming to know is an idea and is a part of the path that you actually know. But at the moment, that's just an idea. You don't know your path in the sense of knowing how to define it. One only knows what one actually lives. And from that perspective, whether or not you walk the path that you're envisioning, that you say you know, won't be whether or not that's what you say your path is. It's whether or not you begin living that path. And I'm going to actually just jump out and connect this to something way out of nowhere from here and connect this to the judgment of God. So when we think about final judgment, that's something that comes up often in our current culture. And when we think about being judged, we think about it from others or the judgment from God. But in fact, we are judging ourselves every moment. And it's what you judge yourself as is then how you behave, and that is what you manifest. So if you judge yourself to be unworthy, you will behave in such a way that you put up walls and don't allow people to love you. If you actually judge yourself as worthy of love, you will open yourself up to it. It's you yourself that judges you. And the heaven or hell that you manifest later is a result of how you judge yourself now. Because how you judge yourself is how you behave. If you judge yourself as a person of high moral character, then you will behave of high moral character. If you judge yourself as somebody who cannot control their addictions, you're going to take the next drink or whatever else it is. And so be aware that you know your path deeply because you're living it right now. And yeah, I don't know how to expand further from that without having that person's reaction.
That was beautifully said. And yeah, I think the distinction you're making between knowing the path that you're on and the path that you want to be on, what you wish you were on, but that is our guiding principle. Like we have those intimations of potential, what could be the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. And those are things that are important to pay attention to. Beautiful response. I'm going to read another question here. And actually, Vicure just responded, okay, this system, no matter whatever country you're in, because all of them are under one agenda, is created to be in couples. Me as a single parent, I understand I must be insane to do that on my own. Okay, I'm going to let that sit for a minute because there's another comment that comes first. Jamie Henderson says, my question is that all of these daily habits, cleaning, etc., are keeping me on the straight and narrow, but I'm struggling to define my largest goal, my North Star. Any tips on understanding this? Do you mind if I respond to that, or do you have something right off the bat?
Nope, you go right ahead.
Jamie, thank you for your question. Yes, so there's what I like to call it is the vision. The vision for me, the way I would answer that is the North Star, the guiding principle, the big shebang, the beautiful potential that I see when I close my eyes, the feeling of bliss and connectedness and love that we're after. And that looks different for every single person. So for me, when I access the image of my potential, my highest self, and potential is like one of the better words for it, but it's not even the best word for it, because the potential always makes it seem like it's out there in the future, but the highest self is also right here, right now. So it's both end. There's that paradoxical truth that the whole picture is hard to paint, but we know that whatever it is that I'm feeling that's out there is actually inside of myself. And so the guiding principle or the larger vision of life for me is that it's kind of an imagery thing. Like I can feel it, see it, sense it, smell it, taste it. It's a higher power. It's a God image. For me, I like to use the soul tree. There's other images that come to mind. And this image is like a portal. And in that portal, there is a landscape of feeling tones and ideas and beauty and poetry and love and all these things. And this is like a place inside of my psyche. And it's not manifested in the physical world as such, but it is a real place that has its connections to the physical world. And so if I can be in conversation with that force, whether it's through using my imagination, doing a visualization, doing a meditation, and accessing that portal, and it doesn't matter if you believe in metaphysics or not, because what you're accessing is a part of your psyche. It's an exercise that will imbue your reality with a sense of meaning. Mercury has his own images that he connects with. I have mine. So I would suggest getting in touch with some of the imagery. Imagery is an incredibly powerful part of our psychological life. And if we can access imagery and be in conversation with it, we tend to manifest those places more and more in our life. So I would say have a conversation. Imagine yourself having a conversation with that part of you, that potential, that higher self. And if you don't have images for it, create some. Close your eyes, see what comes to you. Be imaginative, be creative. If you don't think in images but you think in words, listen to what words come to you. If you think in both terms, use words, images, sensations, everything you can to start accessing this portal for yourself. And then you'll have this bigger vision that feeds into the mundane. So there's this great quote in the book called Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. He's a great Eastern yogi, and I like studying these guys sometimes. And one of the things he talks about that his guru taught him is you must learn to stretch your consciousness over the vast universe while you're sweeping the floor. In other words, it's learning how to connect the sacred and the profane so that there's this access point, so that while you're cleaning your room, you actually feel in alignment with your soul. And that's an intangible, right? Like I could tell you what that is like for me. I could try to describe it and explain it, but until you have that experience for yourself, it's going to be more difficult to understand it. So if you have had any of those intimations, then I would suggest strengthening them. Go back to those encounters, continue to stimulate those experiences. Jordan Peterson doesn't talk about this as much as he could, but he has a lot of these types of experiences. He, in his biblical lectures, he would talk about them in a lot of different lectures, but since he's been more mainstream, he's been talking about his more spiritual side a little bit less. But he does have these Gnostic phenomenological encounters with whatever the divine in his psyche are, and they are an important part of what keeps us going. So I would say get in touch with that if you can.
And let's do the same thing. Read that one more quick time.
Sure.
and I'll do a response.
My question is that all of these daily habits, cleaning, etc., are keeping me on the straight and narrow, but I'm struggling to define my largest goal, my North Star. Any tips on understanding this?
Okay, so first of all, don't undervalue what you are doing well. The fact that you have that daily routine, what you're seeing as the small and mundane, is incredibly important. I would be doing much better if I was better at that. So give yourself some credit. It's fantastic you're doing that. Now, as far as finding your North Star, again, I'm not taking away anything from what Ryan just said. I agree with all of that 100% and could expand on it. But because he's already given you that perspective, I'm going to flip it upside down and give you something else you can do as well to gain some clarity on this issue. Not instead of, but as well as doing everything Ryan just described to you. If you're having trouble defining what your organizing idea is, what is the essential nature of my purpose here in this lifetime, look to your nightmares and the worst part of you. So looking to the best part is great, but also take a look at the worst and see if there's a common theme to all your worst nightmares. See if the worst things that have happened to you in real life, if you notice a certain emotion that comes up every time. So whether these are disasters like health issues or losing somebody or flunking out of school or a business failing, a house burning down, or the ends of your relationships. Every time a relationship has ended, that look at the core emotion of that. And if you can find something like, hey, it's always abandonment. Hey, it's always fear of lack. Hey, it's always this. Then go look up, if you try to find one word that best encapsulates the worst moments of your life, then go look up the list of antonyms for that word and see if one of those jumps out at you. And I actually recently did this exercise where it's a video Teal Swan has up. That is where she just walks you through like the relationships. And I found that when I look back at it and really dove into it, especially for me, my first marriage breaking up timed with going insane. I was broken up with when in the insane asylum. And for me, all my worst moments are entries into hell. I've used that myth repeatedly with people. That's absolutely it. And so my worst moments are feeling damned. And that, when I look up all the synonyms, it's the core purpose for me is salvation. And having done our exercise, I came up with that and then look back at what I'm doing with the channel. And yes, that is what I'm hoping to give everyone. Salvation from whatever hell they're in. Like I want to be a psychopomp. But by looking at the worst thing in your life that fate seems to have put on you every time you're collapsing and suffering the most, what is that word? Then find the opposite and consider whether you were brought into this world to generate that. Beautiful.
We got a couple more. We've got Vacure with a few more comments in response from the earlier ones. Then Mark Matter. We'll get to both of you here. I do want to address Vacure again here for a second. Basically, I'm just going to sum up what they are saying because it'll be a little easier. Basically, they're saying the system that we live in as a culture, as a society, as a world is set up that it's easier to thrive if you're a couple. It's harder to thrive if you're a single parent. As a single parent, I know it's crazy for me to try to do this on my own, but I don't want to damage my child by getting into stupid relationships that I might fail in. I'm not a parent yet. I wish to be a parent one day. I don't feel qualified to give you any advice on that. So
I have a couple thoughts.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I am a parent, and also like when I met my wife, she was a single mother. So she's not now, but she was. First of all, is being a single parent optimal? No. So it's not optimal. But on the other hand, if the situation you're in now is it's either be a single parent or be with someone bad, then it's better to be a single parent. And again, like the Eric Weinstein video, you owe us your struggle in life. You don't owe us success. So whatever reasons you have come to this point in life, Like, it's great. Look back, see what you've done wrong in your past and try to improve. But don't beat yourself up over being a single parent. And being a single parent is better than being with a partner that's abusive or bad for you and the children. On the other hand, if for right now it's better to be a single parent, it doesn't mean you have to accept that as forever. So do the best with where you are right now. Be the best person you can be. And if you're meant to give your children a second parent, that partner will arrive when you're ready for them. But no, don't settle. Like, definitely don't settle for anyone abusive or who isn't, like, who's damaging to the family. It's better to have one parent that loves you than two parents and one that abuses you. So definitely stick it out on your own if the options are worse for the children. On the other hand, don't give up. A single parent is not undateable. There's that idea in the media. That's not true at all. Actually, especially the modern world, we're getting more and more people finding they've gotten older and regret not having had kids earlier. That's a new phenomenon in the world. And so single parents out there might be surprised who they'll meet, for whom the children isn't the disadvantage that the media says it is, where someone's like, wow, yeah, I should have started a family 10 years ago. I would love to have a family now that's already going. But the main thing is, don't worry about finding the other person. Put yourself together the best possible first, and you'll attract the right person for you.
That's beautiful. Mark Matter says, hello, love your content, guys. I seek advice from anyone here. My lack of motivation and drive stems from not being with a good woman and being single for so long. I can't enjoy my hobbies because of it. My lack of motivation and drive stems from not being with a good woman. Okay, I think a couple things. And everybody, please remember, anytime we're answering a question, we are taking very little context and trying to address a very specific issue. So take everything we say with a grain of salt, because we don't know your situation intimately. We're not in your life. We're not able to really see all the nooks and crannies and the angles. And that's what it really takes to understand someone. So just remember that you're the ultimate authority on your life here. This is just something to chew on, to think about, and to consider, and hopefully it helps you along the way, but take it with a grain of salt. If you feel that your lack of romance is making it difficult for you to enjoy your life, there's a few things. You can tackle it from the angle that Mercury just suggested, which is build yourself into the type of person that would attract that partner. So start treating yourself with the respect and the dignity that you deserve and would want a partner the way that you would treat your ideal partner, the way that you would love and cherish them. Build yourself into that sort of person, or start practicing having that sort of self-respect by carrying through the actions, behaviors, and attitudes that would reflect that type of experience and that type of life. So in a lot of ways, there's this old saying. It's called fake it till you make it. And we learned this a lot in 12-step programs, fake it till you make it. And sometimes it really works. If there's something that I can't imagine myself having, instead of continuing to come up against the belief system of why I don't have that thing and all the ideas and the personal narratives and the thoughts, it can sometimes be useful to ask myself, how would I act if I had this? And if you put yourself through that thought experiment, you might find yourself in a situation where the probability that you reach that goal is more high. But also, you could also explore dating and different avenues for meeting people and try to tackle it more directly instead of just trying to attract it by your attitude and your actions otherwise. What do you think, Merc?
I think you said that pretty well. I don't think unless they have a follow-up, I don't think I have anything to add to that. And I'm going to step off for a minute, let you answer a question. I'll be back shortly.
Okay, brother. Mark, I hope that was helpful. You also say you can't enjoy your hobbies. I'm curious about that. Like why, like what's the cause of not being able to enjoy your hobbies? Because you can't get your mind off of trying to find a good woman possibly, or you're obsessed with filling that void so that you can't enjoy anything else until that happens. Is that it? Then we have Gloff says, I love the pink hawk, Merc. I'm sure he'd like to hear that. I'll tell him when he gets back. And then Gloff says, and by the way, it's nice to see you again, Gloff. When is it okay to settle romantically? That's a good question. I don't think that there is a unified answer to that. I think it's unique to every individual. I've been with my girlfriend for 6 years. We're getting, I'm gonna make the next thing happen, if you know what I mean, soon. Keep that between us. She's not watching this, but we're gonna do that thing soon. We're basically already at the point of that level of marriage commitment, so it's really not, there's not going to be a huge difference there. But I don't think that there's a universal rule to that. I think settling romantically depends on who you are. Like some people need to explore and date as many people as possible so that when they settle down, they really know they've picked the right person. Other people just know when they meet the right person, they just have this visceral internal compass that just tells them like, no, this is it. And this is who I'm supposed to be with, and they follow that road, and sometimes it works out, and then sometimes they look back and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe I thought that this was the person for me. These long-term relationships are very complicated. I met Victoria when I was 19, and I haven't really looked back since. We've had our ups and downs. We've struggled through being two young people in a very serious relationship, and we learned about what's codependence and what's a healthy dynamic, and we learned all that stuff by hitting our heads against the wall and failing. And now we're at a point where we live honestly and openly, and we support each other, and we have our own boundaries, and we really worked hard on it. So I think that as long as the two people in the relationship are striving for honest, open connection with mutual support and respect, and it's 50-50, you both contribute to the life situation, you both give, not just one person taking all the time, then you have a pretty good shot of succeeding. So I would say that really base it on that and give it a shot. If there's no reason not to try. And if you're the type of person that needs to date and explore, then that's absolutely fine. That's just my personal experience, my opinion. Again, I don't profess to be qualified to tell you exactly the right answer for all these questions, but all I can do is simply give you my own small piece of the pie, the way I'm seeing the world from where I stand. Jamie Henderson says, those were two beautiful, insightful responses. You've given me a lot to think about. I also wondered what your thoughts on furthering at your education and sorting yourself out after a breakup. Did you want to say anything, Merc?
The after a breakup thing. Yeah, that's a nice, because after a breakup's tough, and for all our negative emotions, there's a use for them. There's a reason they're there. And if you can channel the pain of your breakup into self-improvement, that's a fantastic direction for it. And it's much better than channeling your pain into self-destruction, where someone has been broken up with, so fuck it, I'll start drinking again. Whatever it is that you fall backwards towards. Yeah, that's great. Use the breakup as a chance to learn to do better for the next relationship, and as a chance to push yourself forward. Also, maybe in response to what you were saying before about like who you're choosing to be with. I would just also point out that, like, especially here, us in this sorting community, often you meet someone who's got problems they're working on. Or you meet someone who has their upsides and their downsides, and you're evaluating whether to be with them. Don't be with someone despite their faults. And don't be with someone because of what they might be later. You have to love them for what they are now as you help them move towards the best. And at least I find, like, the deepest love isn't when you love all the good shit about someone and there's these parts of them you hate. It's when you love the whole thing. And I find that's with yourself too. You can't love yourself for who you'll be tomorrow. And you can't just love the best parts of you. You have to find a way to love your faults and your deformities, those things we're here to learn. And I find, not just in a romantic relationship, but also with friendships, the more I learn the ugly parts of people, because people have a tendency to open up to me and tell me things they don't tell most people when I become friends with them. And the things they're the most embarrassed about, the shittiest parts of them, make me admire people, as, like, especially people who are aiming at the good and working forward. When people show me their faults and their failings, that makes me love them more. So you have to love someone for their faults. So if you're going to be with somebody who has addiction issues, it's fine to set rules where, hey, if you fall in and you are, if you're on cocaine, I will not interact with you when you've had a relapse. But if they're relapsing every so often, you can't love them only when they get it all under control. You have to love them, and you even have to love that part of them that relapses and is injured and is trying, and you have to be able to love the whole thing. Really,
you also have to know when to walk away.
Yes, either you have to be able to love the whole thing, or they're not meant for you. And again, if it comes up with an addiction or something, you need to set your line. And it might be, hey, I will be with you, and it's okay if you drink occasionally. Like, we know you shouldn't, but if the occasional drinking, I won't be around you. But hey, if it gets to heroin again, we're done. You have to set that hard line, and you either have to be okay with the weakness they have, or walk away. And you have to try to find the way to love the whole thing. The same thing with every part of yourself. You have to find a way to love yourself while you're still fucking up and being a fool to move forward.
Beautifully said. I don't really have much to add. Oh, furthering your education. That was the other part. Yeah, that was a really big part of my future authoring. Actually, it's the main reason that I decided to pursue further education. And I think education should be more of a loose term, because education doesn't just have to look like going to university. Education, now that we're in the era of YouTube and podcasts and information is becoming more and more accessible, you can, if you have the discipline, you can get yourself an education regardless of who you are, where you are, as long as you have access to modern technology and you have the time to spend a couple hours a day or more, depending on what you want to do that. I think that for me, going to grad school was a really good option. It gives me some structure. It gives me some professional development, and I get to really dive in and have that extra layer of accountability to have things due and to have requirements. And that external accountability does help a little bit. However, if you're passionate about reading or you're passionate about learning, you can discipline yourself and you can essentially become extremely educated. Ken Wilber dropped out of his PhD program. The cliche, Albert Einstein didn't finish high school, blah, blah, blah. I think that's a cliche. I could be wrong about that. But essentially, like, intelligence and education, traditional education, are not necessarily the same thing. They're correlated, but there's no causation. There's no line of direct causation. In fact, there's a lot of evidence that suggests that people who are inspired to learn and passionate about different topics are going to have basically the same level of intelligence in those areas, regardless of whether or not they pursue the traditional route, or if they just continue to take their own path and carve out their own path. So I think it just, to each their own, like so many things, there is no universal rule or law. You can seriously pursue the most beautiful and meaningful education and have no traditional structures whatsoever. And I think that people almost give universities too much credit. While I do see a lot of value in the university structure, it doesn't, at the end of the day, it doesn't define your ability, it doesn't define your skill level, and it doesn't define your competency. You can virtually learn all those things on your own if you want to, and all that information is widely available. I even saw Elon Musk in a video said, I don't give a damn about your degree. Like, when he's hiring people, he's not thinking about the degree. So that sort of thing is going out the window pretty quickly here. I think by the time of the next few generations, it'll be mostly non-traditional online universities and stuff like that, and those things will be respected too. So that's just my personal opinion, and I think education is I love learning, so it's an extremely important part of my life. Now, Go ahead.
So I would add something to that, and I'll just go more general. So it's
Sure.
like to anyone thinking about future education. I don't know your particular circumstances, but if your circumstances line up that it's good, there's a university or college program you're interested in, you can afford it, it's, it fits in with your life, that's what you feel inwardly called to do, great, go for that. But on top of that, Ryan pointed out, in this modern age with the internet, we've got a futuristic form of education that never existed before that can be explored entirely on your own. But also, we still have all the old ancient ways that everyone seems to have forgotten about. So, silent meditation retreat, that is an education from the deepest part of you. And there's the education of the olden days, the education that reporters still do. It's investigation, experiment, and living something. So travel is education. Meditation is education. Discussion is education. Or volunteer somewhere. Find a farm and offer to work free a little bit to learn a bit about what it's like to farm. The olden way of, I've often thought, and because of my anxiety and such, being cut off from the world, I've never actually considered doing it. But sometimes I would love to volunteer at a funeral home and participate in some embalmings to learn a bit about the death process and to learn about a person. So I've never gone through with that. And who knows, I may advance to the point where I actually follow through on that. But is there something about life you're fascinated by? Even if it's like NASA, you'd be surprised how many companies, if you go and volunteer the old school ways, there's more ways to get your foot in than you'd imagine. But simply traveling, listening to people, and open yourself up to what every single moment can teach you. The Fibonacci sequence is hidden all through nature, and it's there for us to find right in front of us. What can you learn from your present moment?
Beautiful. So we've got a couple more here. Bob Brenton says, are either of you familiar with non-duality as a metaphysical framework? Yeah, actually, in my undergrad program, we studied a lot of Eastern religion. We studied Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism. We went through many different traditions, and I am familiar with non-dualism, although it runs through different traditions and seems to mean different things in different traditions. But if you look back at the Samkhya model of Hinduism, and you trace that goes back, thousands and thousands of years. There's this concept of Purusha, which is basically all encompassing. It's the void of which all things are born out of. It's the masculine element of existence. And then there's Prakriti, which is kind of the Leela, the play of existence, the what's the word for it? Maya, as they say in Buddhism. So, but this whole aspect of non-dualism is that basically, in my experience, again, I could be butchering how you understand it, but this is how I understand it, is there is Maya, which is the play of illusions. Like if we view life as a TV screen, or a movie theater screen. Maya is the play, the movie that's being projected on the screen. The screen is just the landscape on which things are happening, but it's all this projection. It's all just being born out of this void, out of this, you could call it, people have called it emptiness, nothingness, although it can't really be empty. But those are some of the non-dualistic ideas, is basically all forms are born out of the formless. That's my understanding of it. I like the Eastern lens on things. I think it's beautiful. Eckhart Tolle's book, Power of Now, was a huge breakthrough for me when I was 16. One of the most beautiful lines that he wrote in that book is, all sounds are born of silence. And if you can learn to listen to the silence out of which the sounds are born, then you're really accessing the power of the present moment. And that really got me into this whole spiritual awakening. And I found that to be absolutely beautiful. So that's kind of my understanding of the non-dual. I feel like I'm missing something, but my brain's not functioning at full capacity since it's been such a long day. Did you have anything on that, Merc?
Just that, yeah, in general, like there's different definitions and interpretations of it. But in general, I do think that is an aspect of reality, non-duality. On the other hand, I think reality also encompasses duality, that this great oneness that has created everything. Yes, from up on that perspective, all is one, and that is absolutely true. But the illusion of duality has been created by the great oneness and is being experienced by it, and anything created by that is real. So yeah. I can step into both frameworks and operate within them for a time, without needing to worry that I can also operate thinking about it in the other way. And it is that the reality itself is something beyond that encompasses both.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's the dual and the non-dual both together somehow. It's an interesting.
Because the non-dual is even hidden in Christianity. Like at the end, we're all one in the body of Christ, and you know that Christ is the Father and the Father is him. You can't get so even by that standard, we are all one at the end anyway. So we are now in a sense as well.
Well, the powerful thing about non-dualism for me is it helps to get into that meditative state where you're just embracing the isness of the present moment. It just is. It's just all happening. And if you can learn to access the witness consciousness, the knower that sits behind the screen and just watches all things happen but never identifies with any of them, that's a powerful place to be in. So I think when the non-dual begins to awaken within our psyches, within our consciousness, for some reason, some powerful things can happen, some powerful new perspectives, some shamanic experiences, even in athletic experiences. Playing basketball, I've noticed when I go to that non-dual place, or golf, or football, or anything, my body learns at a different level. It actually can process information. I can start making hoops at a higher percentage because I'm bringing my consciousness into a trance state, and I'm getting into this flow. So I think it plays directly into the dualism of life somehow.
And perhaps that's consciousness as the nexus point between duality and non-duality to a certain degree.
I like that. You should write a book. That was awesome.
Writing a book sounds like a lot of work.
As he lights up a cigarette, it sounds like a lot of work. That's hilarious. Okay, so boom, we're getting comments here, so lots of them. So we'll see if I can try to keep up here. Gloff wants to know our opinion on the zodiac because it's basically unfalsifiable. It's unfalsifiable. Is it unfalsifiable nonsense, or is there a legitimate metaphysical application? Well, I know that Jung thought that the zodiac was a projection of the collective psyche, the collective unconscious, and that we would make these symbols in the sky not because of the stars, not because that's what's actually going on, but because we're trying to discover something about what's inside of ourselves. And the projective mechanism is the easiest way to discover what's inside you. It's like fish, it's like water to fish. Okay, fish don't know they're in water. They have no ability to understand that if you live in it, if you're breathing it all the time, like the air we breathe, it's just harder to get perspective on it. But when you have that, when you realize your psyche's projecting something out there, you can say, oh, that's what's going on inside of me. There's all these different facets of my personality. So that's one way to look at it. I haven't read all much of Jung's work on astrology at all, but that's what I've heard. That's what I've gathered from people who are experts on this material. But a lot of astrologists seem to believe, and even some of the Jungian astrologists that I know seem to believe that there is something actually happening almost metaphysically with the planetary alignment, and that's affecting us somehow. And there's all sorts of different astrologies. There's Vedic astrology, and I've found that the surface level astrology, like the one that you find out just looking it up on Google, is the least helpful. But if you can find a real expert or a real deep system, there seems to be some truth to it. I personally tend in the direction of genetics as far as personality goes. That's my bias from studying with Dr. Strachan, and even Dr. Robert Plowman has recently come out with his book called Blueprint, decades and decades of twin studies, and he is a brilliant psychologist and scientist that is really discovering the impact that genes has on personality. But I have an interest in an idea, because the alchemist said, as above, so below.
I was just going to say that.
Wow, that's weird. See, there's something going on. If astrology is real and if genetics is real, what if the genome that we all have, very uniquely so, that makes us partly who we are, was also in alignment with the larger universe somehow?
Yeah. What I was
possible. That's a very strange mystical idea, but it could be.
Well, first of all, notice this. You're imagining the stars as quite separate from yourself, but you are entirely made up of stars. The stars have been blowing up for eons, and the pattern of their explosions and the intensity of them, all this radiation, is what actually formed every part of your body. And so your genetic structure, that DNA strand, is entirely made of stardust. And you're saying that because of the pattern that stardust took, the pattern of your DNA strand guides your whole life. Well, that only formed because of the pattern of the stars around us. If the pattern of the sun was different with the pattern of the earth, we wouldn't have formed here. And also, which elements have coagulated? It's the pattern of all the explosions. And we're made up from whichever stars, wherever, and how it all got swirled together required a pattern in the sky. And then on the smaller level, the stardust, on the microscopic level that you can't see, also appears to have arranged itself in a certain pattern. And you're saying that pattern has massive control over your life. So how do you know they're not mirrored? How do you know that's not all one process?
No, I agree. I have no idea. It's a very compelling thought, and I think it bears a lot more research, and I think there's something there for sure. So let me just scroll through here. Oh, this one needs to be responded to. Oh, Jamie says, thank you so much, guys. I needed this tonight. You are absolutely welcome. We are so glad to assist you with your evening and make you feel any bit better possible. So that's an honor, and that makes my whole day. So thank you very much for saying that. And Mighty Man says, I don't have any real interactions. I don't know if it's to do that I'm not a child anymore. I'm 21, or if it's to do with the internet age and everything's becoming a robot. Well, if you're isolated on the internet and you're not interacting with other people very much, yeah, there's a lot in our society set up right now so that that's possible, unfortunately. And one of the reasons we're doing this channel is because we know that there's a lot of people surfing YouTube all the time and they're not getting any real interaction, and they're constantly in the wormhole of content, and they're not getting enough meaningful engagement. So we figured part of the purpose of this channel could be to connect with people like you and perhaps create a meaningful connection that you can rely on, or at least not rely on totally, obviously, because that's impossible, but at least get something out of. And it's a real problem because the socialization that we need as evolved chimps, so to speak, we do need human interaction face to face, and we do need to be outside. We do need to be doing activities with other people. We are social creatures. This is all important stuff. So it's very difficult when we don't get those opportunities. And isolation, and I'm not saying isolation in the positive sense, like meditation or questing or spending time in solitude, in the sense of being alone in loneliness with your thoughts, in your own neurosis, whatever you want to call it, can be a very difficult thing. And it's addictive too. It's like a cycle, especially with technology, because technology, when you watch a YouTube video, it's stimulating the reward centers in your brain. You're getting a dopamine kick. So it's keeping you on, but it's keeping you on the surface. And then all of a sudden, the part of your brain, which is the amygdala, that's responsible for threat response, views leaving that isolated environment as a threat because it's gained this safety zone within this very well-known territory. So now all of a sudden we have a society in which, for some people, just getting off your computer and interacting with another human being is facing the dragon of chaos. That's really difficult. And I'm not minimalizing that at all. That's a real problem. And if you're struggling with that, my heart goes out to you, because it's a difficult thing, especially if you're 21 years old. I mean, you might have had a cell phone or a tablet or a computer in front of your face since you're 12. So, and now people even are having iPhones at 6-7 years old. Parents are giving their kids phones. So it's extremely difficult. I don't think I was helpful there at all. I think I just gave a really dark summary of the problem.
No, I think that was good, and I'll add to it, because you're pointing out that essentially what the screen takes away from you is your connection to other people. And the screen is an interesting technology. This portal into this new dimension that we've created is fascinating and has lots of positive uses, but be aware of what it's robbing you of. It is robbing you of interaction with other people, but there's two other forms of connection it tends to rob you of as well. One is a connection to nature. You're always in front of your screen. And so the difference between, sort of isolation and being alone. I spent years in isolation, but spending lots of time in nature, and you don't feel alone out in nature. When you really get out there, especially get out into the wild and sit quiet for a while and notice how many things around you are alive that are camouflaged and hiding as you storm through.
Right.
So the connection to nature you could be missing as well. And then there's the connection to yourself and God. If you're constantly paying attention to a screen, you're not paying attention to your inner self. And if you're constantly paying attention to a screen, you're not paying attention to any of the guides, guardians, or angels, or the source itself that are present and speaking to you all the time. So our screens are wonderful toys, but be aware that they rob you of other experiences while providing one.
Yeah. And he clarified, I don't struggle with going out. So now I'm rereading his message because I might have misinterpreted it. I don't have any real interactions. So I guess I misinterpreted what you meant by real. Maybe by real you mean authentic.
Yeah.
Deep. And authentic. He says yes, he means authentic. So we need to readdress the whole question.
Okay.
I thought he meant like real as in actual.
I don't think that was still a problem that you took it the wrong way, because someone else could be watching this that meant it the original way. So when we misinterpret a question, that's just maybe that means someone else needed to hear that answer and they're not on to ask. Yeah. So, so let's jump into how to find meaningful interactions when your social life feels shallow.
Fantastic. Well,
Uh,
why don't you start with that one?
You want me to start on that? Okay.
Yeah, you go for it.
So the first is actually sharing yourself. If you're presenting a persona to the world that is not authentic, then you will not feel connected to people because they're not connected to you. They're connected to whatever part you're playing in front of them that doesn't feel like you. Also, we bond over both tragedy and victory. And sharing, it's weird. Facebook culture, like, we have this tendency to want to just put the best of us forward, to the point where I saw there's some company now that will Photoshop fake vacation pictures for you for Instagram so you can make your life look wonderful while you're not experiencing that at all. And it's the tragedy also that bonds us. And again, like I said earlier, what I love about my wife isn't the best parts of her alone. I love all of her. And the more I know her, the more I really love her. So if you're not sharing a part of yourself because it's the ugly, the defeated, the selfish part of you, know that other people aren't seeing you as the multifaceted being you are. And then also to participate in something meaningful together. I've heard Peterson say that his deepest friendships are all people he's worked on meaningful projects with. And me and Ryan have found that very much to be true. So we were friends before, and we did the occasional thing on his channel and talked on a regular basis. But since doing this project together and working together on it, me and him have gotten so much closer, like extremely fast.
Having something meaningful to do with someone is really important. So, like something that you can share, a struggle that you can share together that pushes you both, as well as inspires you, excites you, enlivens you. Those are all things that will really help get that authenticity. So a lot of times if you're not feeling like your connection with other people is real, it can mean a couple things. One is it can mean that you're not being authentic enough. You're not sharing enough of yourself. And another thing it could mean possibly is that the people you're surrounded with aren't interested in that sort of interaction. So then that becomes a matter of finding different people that are interested in that sort of interaction. Now we go all to a different, deeper level. It can also be that we're afraid of sharing that part of ourselves because if people who knew who we really were, then we might be rejected. And if we're rejected for who we really are, then that's going to really hurt. But if we're rejected for what we're presenting, at least it's not who we really are. So we can put up a facade. It's like, yeah, you can reject this false image of me because nothing's at stake. I'm just projecting a false image of myself. I'm not risking anything except for something I've created in my imagination that I'm now presenting to you. On the other hand, if I say to you, hey, I really care about people. I'm interested in transformation and psychology. Here's what I think about that. By the way, I had a rough day. I got in a fight with my girlfriend, and I'm feeling pretty depressed. And, this is what inspires me in life, and this is what bums me out. That's real. So if I'm being real, and then you say, hey, fuck you, you're a piece of shit, I'm going to hurt. It's going to hurt because I took a risk. And the bottom line is that when I take the risk of authenticity, I'm being courageous because I might actually get hurt. All the people who say, no, you're not going to get hurt, it's all in your head, that's a little bit of wishful thinking. It's like if we open our hearts and live authentically in the world, things are going to hurt sometimes. It's just a matter of, can we handle that? Can we deal with that? Every time I put out a podcast or a live stream, I risk saying something incredibly foolish. I've said things foolish on this stream. I'm going to continue to do it. People are going to insult me. It's not always going to be well received, and it's going to hurt sometimes. I'm learning to deal with that as I go along in my life. Also, the other cool thing is people are going to respond well to it. The right kind of people are going to find it. People that actually care about me, like Mercury and other friends I have in my life. So when I share that authenticity, yeah, sometimes I'm taking a risk and sometimes it doesn't pan out well. But the upside is I get these amazing authentic connections because I was willing to take the risk and I continued to explore it and I stuck with it even after I was hurt and I didn't close back up. and I learned to trust my true self, and I learned to care about myself even when other people didn't. And these are all things that we can do for ourselves. So if you feel like you're struggling with authenticity, hold yourself to the standard of authenticity and find people who will value it. And the people who won't value it, those are the people that you discard, that you let fall away, that you let burn off, like the deadwood that Dr. Peterson talks about. The people that are really meant to stick around will stick around. And that doesn't mean they won't ever criticize you. Sometimes good friends need to criticize us. Sometimes I've had people say to me, hey, Ryan, I really like what you're doing, but this area could use some improvement. And that kind of hurts too, because I'm doing something, I'm really trying to do something, and somebody says that I didn't do something up to par, and then I have to realize my own insufficiencies, and that can be a struggle with my, well, whatever you want to call it, ego, my heart, all these different things. So there's all these different levels of analysis that we can take authenticity from. Then there'll be sometimes when our friends are trying to help, but they're just wrong. They're just out to lunch, or they're having a bad day and they're taking it out on you, or they just have an opinion that you don't agree with. It's a complicated issue, authenticity. It really is.
Yeah, and also we jumped into a lot of like working on themselves because we don't know their situation, but also maybe the reason you don't have feel a connection to people around you is that you're surrounded by assholes. I don't know who you are or where you live, but if you're at a clans meeting one night looking around thinking, I don't feel a deep sense of connection with any of my brothers, the answer is you're surrounded by racist assholes. Go somewhere else. So there's also Peterson's rule, whatever it is, about making sure you choose the right friends, friends that want the best for you. So the problem could be you, the problem could be the people around you, or it could be a mixture of both.
Yeah, absolutely.
But don't be afraid to get the fuck out of a bad social group or a bad scene because you're worried about being alone. Being alone's better than hanging out with a bunch of Klansmen.
Yeah, that's for sure. So I'm going to read a few more comments here. We've got one troll, we've got a lot of comments. Christianity is a kind of non-dualism. To be honest, it's Trinitarianism, says Gloff. In Plato's Fabio dialogue, Socrates talks of everything that is generated from its opposites. To be taller, something must have been shorter. To be brighter, it must have been darker. Yeah, that's a really good one. And Jung talks about that as well in his compensatory psychology. Bob Brenton says, JP in the Bible in general talks about humans having a spark of the divine. As a non-dualist, I expand that identity to there is nothing but the divine, as in we're all in the dream of God. Yeah, well, that's exactly kind of what I meant by the movie theater and the screen, and that's a analogy that's used often by, I don't even know where it originates from, but many teachers have used that. That's beautiful. I love that you look at things that way. Bob says, if we're looking for ultimate meaning, purpose, then seeing the divine in the other seems to be a step in the right direction. That reunion with the other has a name, love. That's absolutely beautiful, seeing the divinity in others. Gloff says, does dualism privilege one of the duality over the other? I'm going to keep reading through all these since we have so many. Just to XYZYX says, two idiots speaking with a picture of Jordan Peterson to look smart. You know, it's funny, when we first started doing this channel, I'd get so like freaked out by trolls, and now I can just, it doesn't faze me to come in. But yeah, I can actually see why we would look like idiots, to be honest. You know, if I just came across us talking, I would probably think the same thing, or at least have some doubt. I might not be so harsh, but I would have some critical voices going in the back of my head. I might not be so bold as to say what you said, but that's all right. Let's see. Mark Matter says, I think that might be part of my issue as well. Unable to establish a legit connection. Yeah, I think it's an issue for a lot of us. It's something that we all could benefit from continuing to work on.
Also, we could thank whoever pointed out that we're idiots, because it starts with Peterson saying that be a fool, you have to look like an idiot, and that's the first step towards redemption. So I really appreciate that you see that in us, that we're trying to move in the right direction, and that you see that spark of divine, and that we're idiots on the verge of becoming saviors. Thank you so much for that love and support.
You just turned that shit into compost, and now it's growing into a flower bed. That's nice. Good stuff. Okay, so let's see here. There's a couple. Gloff says go check out the Black Mirror series for a glimpse into the digital dystopia. Cool. That sounds like a interesting. I've heard some things.
Yeah, I've watched some Black Mirror. It's dark stuff, so don't be like end of a hard day and I want to feel great. It's kind of like Twilight Zone. It's an anthology of science fiction,
Right.
but it's exploring the dark part of us, and some of it is powerfully disturbing.
Wow.
Yeah, an excellent series if you want to explore some of the darker aspects of society.
Right on. I might check that out. That sounds kind of fun. Yeah, someone just commented, what the fuck, this isn't Jordan Peterson. Go to the beginning. We recorded Jordan Peterson clip at the beginning, and then we responded to it. So and then we just ended up, we didn't even plan on staying on too long, but we ended up getting a lot of questions after our response, so we're still on. So just scroll back to the beginning if you want to hear Jordan Peterson, and if you don't want to hear us, then you can just stop playing it after that. So last question here that's on. How do you cultivate true authenticity? Sometimes I feel like I'm being very insecure and too ironic. That's from Gloff.
What's his name? David Foster Wallace. Am I getting that right? Who's the guy who's good to look up about the problems with sarcasm and irony? So I would bring that up to look into. And then just my most general how to be authentic is spend a lot of time alone, where you don't have to worry about that pressure of how anyone else is seeing you. Go on a nice long vacation from the world and try to be just authentic with yourself first, if you have that luxury.
Awesome. Well, other than what I said, I think you asked that question while I was talking about authenticity, so I might have covered some of it. But, you know, you're also kind of a joking person. Like, sarcasm is part of your personality. So, because I know you and we've had conversations. So maybe sometimes it goes further than you want it to, but I wouldn't say it's inauthentic knowing you. I think there is some authenticity in it, but maybe you want to allow other parts of you to come out too. Sometimes what happens is a couple sub-personalities take over and they're constantly running the show, and the other sub-personalities that also want a platform for expression get frustrated and thwarted because they're people too. They're like, hey, I'm a person too. Like, why can't I express? For example, like I have a challenger, and my challenger loves to challenge ideas, loves to fight, loves to argue, loves to debate, loves to point out issues, loves to go after things. But there's parts of me that really don't like that. Like I have a lover, and I have just parts of me that feel deeply connected and are much more subtle and less abrupt. And when I'm too much in the challenger, those parts of me are kind of waving their flag saying like, hey man, like I just want to love people. I just want to connect with people. I don't want to fight. Why do we keep doing this? This doesn't feel good to me. This doesn't feel fully authentic to me. So we have to deal with those dichotomies within our personality that are pulling us in different directions and make compromises. Like we reel back in the challenger a little bit and give other parts of me the platform to express things. One of the huge breakthroughs I've had recently, after I did challenge Gabor Mate in a video, which is not even up anymore, but I realized that when I get too debatey, and I've done this at school dealing with the SJW culture and different things, when I get too much in my debating self, I stop feeling connected. Like there's a point where I take the challenger too far and I no longer feel like I'm being my authentic self. Meanwhile, I know other people that could debate all day, like a Ben Shapiro, even Dr. Strachan, my dear mentor, and they don't feel bad about it at all. It doesn't deplete their energy. It doesn't bother them internally. They enjoy the challenging. They enjoy the warriorhood, or whatever you want to call it. Peterson says that although he has to debate many times, it takes a lot of energy, and he doesn't necessarily like arguing with people. So just figuring out like what your system is doing, what your subpersonalities want from you, and learning how to make compromises so that they can all get a slice of the pie is an important aspect of individuating and being authentic, and being a democracy onto yourself, letting everybody have a vote as far as what's happening. Now, then you have to have a greater principle of being, like the soul or higher power or something that can be some sort of guiding authority that all the people listen to, because otherwise you'll just be in this chaotic, non-compromising mess where you're constantly titrating from one extreme polarity of your psyche to another, and you never get to fully be you. You never get to experience your beautiful totality because you're too stuck in one polarity. So finding that balance can be really essential. And for me, just being more loving lately has been really helpful. Like going to school, and if I hear lots of social justice stuff, I just haven't been arguing lately. Like I was arguing last couple quarters ago. I don't agree with it. That's not what this channel is about. But I just learned that it doesn't feed me to debate it right now. I just want to be loving. If people know where I stand, I've said my opinions. I don't need to say them again. If they want to continue to talk about that in class, then I will deal with it and I will accept it and I will try to learn from it and see what I can do to tolerate that experience, even though it's extremely annoying to me and I don't like it. And for me, having that open heart and just allowing myself to love has been helpful. And that's authentic to me. To another person, they might not feel that authentic. They might feel like they need to argue every single time, and that might be good for them. So I don't believe in universals. I don't believe that we should all handle situations the same. I believe that everybody's personality needs a different dynamic in order to work for them. Anyways, that's the last question, Merc. Do you want to respond to that too?
I don't know. What you said was good.
All right. Well, let's get out of here. I want to cook some dinner. And thank you, everyone, so much for joining us and listening and allowing us to share. And hi, Nolan. Thank you for doing a podcast. Nolan joined us earlier. We talked about a comic called The Killing Joke, or a graphic novel, I guess. And we will be posting that soon. Kind of did a little bit of an archetypal analysis. And Nolan was a fantastic guest. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm so grateful for all of you. I need to go cook. What are you gonna do, Merc? You gonna hang out for a bit?
My wife and one of my daughters are assembling a trampoline outside right now. I got my wife a trampoline for her birthday because they had a smaller trampoline before and the kids loved it, but it got ruined by a snowplow this winter. And my wife's birthday was recent, so I got them a trampoline, like a much bigger one, because the little kids love it. So I'm going to head out and help them put together her birthday gift.
Have a great night.
Yeah, you too. And thanks, everyone, for joining us. And thanks, Nolan. That was so funny. Right before you said he was online, I was going to throw out a promo for the conversation. I was going to say, by the way, we talked to Nolan today about The Killing Joke. It was really fun. You can look forward to that soon. So that was an awesome synchronicity.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you, everyone, so much for your participation. It's really meaningful for us, and I hope it was meaningful for you, or at least entertaining and enjoyable. So, Mercury, I will talk to you soon, man. Have a good night, and everyone else have a good day or evening, depending on when it is for you.
Bye, everyone.